All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Return to Run postpartum series. We're super excited to have Steph Bruce as our first guest. She was also one of the elite runners I worked with a long time ago and really helped spread the word about what I did with clients as well. And she was just really vocal about her struggles with Diastasis Recti, and by the way, you can say it either way, Diastasis Recti, diastasis. Professionals say it either way. But she was the first one to really be vocal about it in the professional running community. She had a post that went viral when she decided just to wear sports bras and show the ab separation. It was visible, and not shy away from showing that she has it and was learning how to navigate that postpartum. So we're going to talk to her today about how her postpartum journeys went with after her first and second. And I have Aubrey joining me. She's my research assistant. She's also a trainer and a running coach. Is also learning ReCore and how to work with pre and postnatal women. She's a published researcher and has worked with Jared Ward in running shoe research. And so I'm really excited. I've had her working with me for almost a year now. I'm losing track, but
like that.
a lot of fun projects we're working on. So Steph, why don't you, well, first I need to intro you a little bit more. You're a professional runner for NAZ Elite, NAZ Elite. And how long have you been running with them?
Since their inception. Coach Ben and Jen got the group started loosely around like 2014, and then 2015 became official. So I've been here since the beginning when Hoka came on.
Awesome. And I just remembered I need to start my live.
Yes, the Instagram live.
So let me do that real quick. And I knew I would forget something. All right. All right, so if you're joining us live from Instagram, you can register online to get a better view of this and get a recording of this if you would like, and also get alerts when we do more webinar series, because we do have more coming up. So we have Steph here joining us, and we're going to talk with her about a postpartum journey. I also wanted to remember, how many marathons have you done now?
Oh gosh.
You know?
I'm getting so old. I don't remember. I think I'm at, I'm running New York in just under 6 weeks. And I think that will be marathon number 12 for me.
Wow. And how many before your children were born?
4 kids. Yeah. So I ran my first one in 2008. And then I ran Houston Marathon in 11, Honolulu in 12, and then part of the Olympic trials in 2012 before I dropped out. So then basically all my marathons since have been postpartum.
Okay. And her fastest marathon now to date is like a 2:27. And yes, she's got New York City Marathon coming up in like, what, 5 weeks? Coming up soon?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So as you know, Steph has been open about her postpartum struggles. And so I'm really excited for her to be willing to share her journey a bit and talk about how she's learned to navigate all of this. So let's start with your timeline a little bit. After your first son was born, how did recovery go for you? Yeah. And what kind of things did you do?
Sure. So let's see. Riley was born in 2014 in June. And, you know, I would say through that pregnancy, I ran up until about 30 weeks. And then really, I just kind of let my body guide me. I was having pain in what they call like the round ligament, you know, like underneath my belly. And I thought, hey, maybe that's a good sign that I need to cut back on exercise. So I stopped running, stopped doing everything altogether. And honestly, just watched a lot of HGTV because I felt like my life was going to change. I might as well get in some quality shows before I have a baby. And then Riley's delivery was pretty rough. He was a very big baby. He was 9 pounds, and he was faced the opposite way that is ideal. And so I pushed for about 5 hours with him, and I had a natural birth. And because there was so much difficulty of him coming out, I ended up having a grade 4 tear, and they did an episiotomy to essentially help him come out. So to me, all I remember is the hospital team and people on the floor being like, "Did you hear about the woman in room like 308?" Everyone was talking about me because of how bad and traumatic the birth was. And of course, they were talking about like my size and me being smaller. But yeah, I was still able to grow a 9-pound baby and give birth to him. So recovery was, it was really rough, especially because, as you know, there wasn't a lot of information out there. I feel like people, they share birth stories, and then it's like fast forward to a couple months, oh, now I have a newborn, like look at how my life is going. But I feel like there was a really big gap between you have a 6-week postpartum checkup, and you see your gynecologist, your midwife, and they check you to see if there's any prolapse, anything like really glaringly wrong. And then they just say like, you are good to go, and send you on your way. And I remember going home being like, I feel like my uterus is falling out. Am I sure I'm good to go? Um, there's I'm still sitting on a donut. Like I couldn't sit down. Bleeding had stopped, kind of all the like markers for, I guess you would call it like a recovery or health. But yeah, I was feeling really demoralized. And then on top of just being a woman recovering from childbirth, here I was now trying to return to very competitive and high level running. My first run was about 8 or 9 weeks postpartum, and I made it 3 minutes. And I basically like crap my pants. I lost all control of my bowel movements, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a really long road back. And just no one was talking about it, especially in the professional running world. There were a couple women who had gone before me and had children. And then I'm seeing them like 9 months later. Paula Radcliffe was like, I won New York Marathon. And I was like, what? Like, how is all of this going to get from here to there? So then that was kind of the catalyst for me to, I guess, start sharing my journey. And as we joke when we say I went viral, it's sad that I went viral because I just happened to have a platform where I was talking about something that was happening to hundreds, thousands, millions of women. But because I was an athlete and I was really trying to transform my body from like giving birth to a professional athlete, it almost like, yeah, it gave me the platform to be able to speak on it. But women who just wanted to go from, hey, I would just like to walk again and feel good, or I would just like to, do any sort of mild exercise, but they're getting pain because either they have diastasis recti or they have organ prolapse, all the things that like affect women postpartum, but are never really talked about. So that kind of, I guess, was the catalyst for my journey to share what I was going through. And then also my commitment to find out like who could women go see in that interim period. And I remember doing research and I was like, is there anyone out there that, is pelvic floor specialist and, or, can help with retraining of my core? Because what I found was the biggest kind of elephant in the room. I would say like 10 or 12 weeks postpartum, people were congratulating me because they thought I was newly pregnant because I had a gap in my abdomen and it essentially made it look like I was still pregnant. And that was the impetus to find you and reach out to you. And then, I had some fun stuff happen the next couple months, which was a little not part of the plan, but I'll kind of stop there and see if you want to jump in with any questions.
Yeah, so the first pregnancy so no one mentioned to you anything about a pelvic floor PT or diastasis or any sort of prep work before you started running?
Not really. I mean, I think, well, one of my best friends who Sarah Tanza, who's Pelvic Potential, we started to really connect probably like once my first son was a few months old, and then what happened with Hudson. But at the time, since I didn't really know what I was looking for, it's almost like I didn't know what to seek out. And I think that's what happens. Women don't know what they're trying to prevent from happening, or they don't know what they're trying to train. So
Right.
everyone's kind of like, should my core be strong? Should it be loose? Should my pelvic floor muscles like be tight? Should they be loose? You know, what's best for birth, and then what's best for recovery.
And so tell us a little bit about Hudson's
Story.
recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially I felt like at about 4 or 5 months, I was kind of finally getting my head above water with Riley. You know, my incontinence and things like that were still happening on runs, but I was able to train at a semi like decent level for me. Around 3 to 4 months postpartum, I was running like 50 to 60 miles a week, which relative to my high end training, you know, I run 90 to 100 miles a week. So that was about 60% less than that. So maybe someone who's trying to run, you know, 40 miles a week, you're running 15 miles a week those first couple months. And I feel like I was kind of getting my stride back a little bit. And then around 6 months postpartum, I started to feel really bad in training. And I was like, oh no, like maybe I wasn't like meant to do this. Maybe it's too hard to come back from babies. But we got a really big oops surprise. And I found out I was pregnant with Hudson. And that was kind of the reason, why I started to feel that way. And so I almost feel like I never quite recovered from Riley, and then I got pregnant again. So it felt like all the work that I was trying to do to get my core and my pelvic floor to work again was like, well, you're going to go through it again. So it's really hard to know if my diastasis recti or all the issues that I kind of deal with now, or I did those first couple of years, were because I had my baby so close together. They ended up being 15 months apart. And Hudson's labor was worlds easier and different than Riley, but you can't take away the fact that I still had a really rough, labor and recovery with him. So I'm sure I was still recovering 18 months later. Hudson weighed 8 pounds, and I got an epidural with him, no tearing. So everything went pretty smoothly. But then I found myself at home with a newborn and a 15-month-old. And I was like, okay, how are we ever going to get back? And I find that's the most difficult part, how to prioritize your time. Like, okay, if you have 10 minutes in the day or 15 minutes, what should you be doing? Should you be trying to walk? Should you be trying to train? Should you do breathing exercises? And I think that's really important. If we could guide women in that direction of what's really important in the early stages and what becomes less important, as you get farther away postpartum.
Yeah.
So how did you two connect? Like, how did you find each other?
I'm thinking I had reached out to you after the viral post. I thought I'll probably never hear from her, but I'll just let her know what I do and I help women with, and specifically recondition their inner outer core. She's an elite athlete. I think you were actually, it was 2016. So it was after your second. And I had worked with some elite athletes before, but it was usually early on in the postpartum, and you were several months post, was already running a lot. But I thought surely there's got to be some things I could help her with. And so I think I reached out and you did reach back, and then we ended up talking on the phone. And I think that's when talking on the phone with you, going through what you had been doing, just asking questions, what were you working on? What had you done in the past, made me realize, okay, I think there are some things that could work on with you. Sometimes it's very typical. People just do some basic breathing, transverse ab exercises, basic pelvic floor exercises. And then maybe they're doing planks and they're running, but they never really focused on challenging those inner core muscles very well, or working on the coordination of those muscles very well. So I remember thinking that before I went out and saw you, but what do you remember about it, Steph?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. I'm very much a person, like if someone, usually I try to reach back out to people just in general. That's always been a goal of mine. And through all the postpartum stuff, that started becoming increasingly difficult because I found how many women were really struggling. And like just in the last couple of days, I've had a couple of women say, "Hey, I found you, I have DR." So I hope they're on this and listening. But yeah, once like Celeste started saying, some of these things about like rectus abdominis, and I'm like, okay, she's speaking my language, because it was things I knew I needed help with, but I didn't know how to do it myself. And as professional athletes, we tend to work in the way of, if you give me something to do, I'm definitely going to do it. If you tell me that's going to heal me or make me better, I will do it. And so I think I knew that Celeste had all the tools. And then I felt really fortunate, being someone who gets paid to do this for a living. I had the resources to be like, okay, can we get her out to Flagstaff? Can she come like actually do a test with me in person? How ideal if everyone could do that, but I know financially that's not doable for everyone. So I felt fortunate I could do that. She could see me and she was able to say, "Hey, you're not ready for this exercise. That's a little too aggressive. So you have to back up." And I think the most important thing, like Celeste was just like, you need to learn how to breathe again. And sometimes as athletes and just being busy in life and moms and parents, we're just like, whatever, I know how to breathe. Oh, I'm doing that every day. But if you can like slow it down and realize your breath is the innermost part of your core. And in order for everything to be externally strong, you need to be internally strong. That was the huge takeaway I learned from her. And then it was kind of cool that after we started working together, I noticed some other professional athletes like Alicia, Gwen Jorgensen started to reach out to Celeste. So I was like, okay, like, I think we're really like hitting the nail on the head. And I just wish we could, speak to more women and be able to have this setting where women are like, okay, I'm 3 weeks postpartum, I'm doing this. I'm 6 weeks postpartum, I'm 2 years postpartum, I'm doing this. So she was huge in getting me out of pain and putting me on the right track so I could like do my job.
Yeah, and I was trying to reflect back to the visit, and I remember assessing you, and you had quite a bit of core strength. I mean, you could do some things that, early postpartum women have struggles with, hold a side plank, hold a regular plank. I mean, you had good general body strength, upper, lower, even outer core strength you had. And so it was really more, like you said, the breathing is a good foundation. And the core and the pelvic floor are just so complex because they are involved in so many things. And oftentimes we train the core in only one direction, in one position. And the core really does have to be strong enough to work in all different positions. And when it breathes, there's so many variable positions for that. And then you have the transverse that needs to be able to stiffen and resist lengthening, which is what helps control intra-abdominal pressure, which helps and we want to be able to handle high pressure, which is what happens when we run fast, when we do hard core exercises. We need our core to be able to handle that high pressure. And if we've only done basic breathing or we've just strengthened the outer core, then it is going to still struggle to do some of those things. So I just remember thinking, she has a strong core, but let's just work on that inner core a little bit. I remember the glutes and adductions were also something we wanted to work on, and just the coordination of the core and the pelvic floor, getting it to contract, getting it to relax, getting it to track. Sometimes people do tend to be really tight. Sometimes people just, they don't necessarily have the strength or just the coordination. So, I know when we were working with you, I know you also struggled with like some pelvic pain. What kind of symptoms were you remember dealing with after Hudson and returning to run? Because when I came to you, you were already doing some high mileage at the time also.
I was, yeah. And that's good and bad in a way. Like I said, with it being my job, we tend to be able to strengthen everything externally. So I will find a way to run around things that are not working well. So after I had some imaging done, it kind of showed that my pubic symphysis, like the bone across my pelvis, essentially had little micro tears. So they don't necessarily call that a stress fracture, but it's just stress being laid down. And I think that was because my adductors were really weak. And so then my glutes were working really hard. And since my core wasn't strong enough, I was kind of the best way, like dragging my pelvis and just like trying to run, but not run from my glutes or with a strong core. So my adductors were my biggest problem. So we started really, I think that was huge, getting my adductors strong in the beginning was a really good way because they kind of hold your core and your pelvic floor together. So most of my symptoms were across my pelvis and then a little up into my like upper core. But again, I was also trying to push the envelope and run more than probably, most women would be running at that stage. But it being my job, we felt like I was taking care of all the other things, but it was definitely going to be a time thing, meaning I could only stress my body so much, and then I'd kind of have to back off and then build up again and then back off. I think that's one thing I'm really proud of postpartum. I really went at going up, then step back down, then going up, step back down versus your normal, everyone would love this trajectory. But postpartum bodies are just so different. And I had to listen to when I hit a threshold, I had to back off. And I think that allowed me to essentially stay pretty much 99% healthy for those first like 5 to 6 years postpartum. Should I show those adductors exercises while we're here? Get a little interactive with people.
Yeah, let's do that for sure.
I wore a sports bra so you can see my stomach. Okay, so one of the adductor, it was just called the adductor bridge is what I started with. And essentially, so I'm working on my right adductor. So the left knee is kind of in front of you at, let's say, a 45-degree angle. And then you just bridge up. And when I was in the early stages, this would be enough. I'm pressing my right foot into the ground. So I'm feeling this adductor kind of turn on. And this would be enough. I would just do 20 to 30 second repeats, pushing into the ground, feeling this engage, and then go back down. And then now, 6 years postpartum, I can do this, and then I lift my bottom leg up. So now I have a lot of stress on my adductor, and I can hold this for 15 to 20 seconds at a time. And then the most advanced one I do is, maybe I can do it on this. I kind of have let's say a bench at the gym where I do this, and I go like this. And ideally my leg would be able to go through a bench right now, but I'm just at a higher angle off the ground. And a lot of times when you're feeling like your right adductor, the opposite oblique works together. So my left oblique is helping me stabilize. And so this is like a nice sling, this opposite.
Yeah. And I know Wes had a lot of work with you also and did a really good job helping you continue to build your strength postpartum. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so since you're right there, let's have you go through some of the early core exercises you remember, or I can share some of my favorites I did with you. And then, maybe share, do you do any of these easy exercises anymore? Do you feel like you've moved past them? You don't really work on them anymore? What do you think about the kind of the basic inner core exercises?
I'm embarrassed to admit to you, I don't do them anymore. But
I think that's okay. Yeah. I think that's okay. I don't think it's necessary all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my marker would be I'm running 100-mile weeks and I haven't had any injuries in my core, pelvis, anything. So that makes me feel like the intrinsic stuff is working. Yeah, I guess we could show in the early days, the first thing that you kind of had me do was just the ab bracing, and whether people will see this here or not. You have a couple of questions too on the chat.
Well, we're hopefully I'll let Aubrey look at them and maybe she'll tackle some of them now, or we'll wait to the end.
Yeah, I remember just kind of the breathing exercises where kind of notice my hands sinking on an exhale. And you can speak to this more if you think I'm doing, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Yeah, doing an excellent job. I mean, usually when people start out with the basic breath like you are, they're just learning how to expand and contract the transverse abdominis muscles, because those are the ones that stretched out the most. And the only way to strengthen is to contract them and shorten them. So we do have to kind of draw them in initially. It doesn't mean we have to draw them in all the way every time we do an exercise. But initially, to wake them up and get them strong, we do kind of want to contract them and pull them down quite a bit.
And then the next set from here is when I'm doing this, then I would do a leg slide.
Yeah, and then I remember, this is one that I really only give people if they're super early. A lot of times I'll give them a double heel slide. I'll skip the single. We'll just go straight to double. Usually if they're several weeks postpartum or they have not done any inner core strength work before. And if I test them on this and they can do it and keep that core down while they move those muscles, then I move them on to a harder exercise. So it's definitely not something, everyone has to do every single progression, but checking and seeing where they're at, how much core control they have, which, as we've explained, core control is different than core strength. It's the ability to control the pressure. And so do you remember the hard one? Let's just go to the drop test. Okay. That one where you bring your feet up. Mm-hmm. And you definitely have to be able to engage your core and pull it down and keep the transverse contracted, shortened, and try not to move those abdominal muscles through the leg drop. So it's definitely one of the more harder transverse exercises to do, but as you can see, Steph can do it quite well. She engages. If you take a breath, your core is going to move, and that's fine. You try to just breathe out the whole time, and then you can pull those legs back up to make it harder, or you can add weight in between your legs. You can put a medicine ball. Once this gets easy, put a medicine ball in between those legs and lower and come back up.
I remember how would women be knowing this was too aggressive? When I was first doing it, huge bulge here. So when I was stepping down, that would really bulge, and that would tell you, hey, back off, a little too aggressive. Yeah,
and bulging, in the last year, there's been a little controversy about, well, can I let it bulge a little bit? And I think that's okay. You're just training the muscles differently. You're not really strengthening the transverse very well if it's bulging. And then you're also not controlling the pressure very well. So you can do it that way. You'll strengthen your muscles to some extent, but you're not learning how to control pressure. You're also not strengthening that transverse very well. And so that's the one thing one of them that got stretched out a lot. And so it also teaches you how to generate stiffness in the muscles, and stiffness is different than strength. Hodges does a lot of research on this. And so if you engage and you load that transverse, you get a really big response out of the transverse, and also strengthen that wall against the pressure. So sometimes people say, well, I can let it bulge and I can do the exercise. It's going to be a little easier actually, because you're not requiring those muscles to stay contracted, but you're also not really strengthening that transverse very well.
Yeah. This is a good question that kind of went along with that. It said, so if you can't do the drop leg test or the double heel slide, are you not supposed to run yet?
Nope. I do like to see people spend a few weeks of core reconditioning if they're early postpartum. Get a good core pelvic floor foundation before you return to run. But usually that's, most people can work on getting like halfway, and that's a good response in the core to be able to run. I don't require it. I just like to see people start to regain core control a little bit. And that usually only takes a few weeks of work. And we start with something like double heel slides, dead bugs, And, you know, we're doing other core muscles as well. I don't just focus on the transverse, but it's just one that's very easy to see the progress in because of the drop test. And why don't you demonstrate the sitting lean exercise, and we kind of see how your core responds. You know, partly training the core to shorten and contract lets the brain take what it needs when. If we only train the core one way, the brain's only going to respond one way. If we train all different directions, doing everything, then it can respond the way you want it to. And I'm sure, Steph, I will ask you, do you think about your core very much anymore? Do you feel like it just engages like it should? You feel strong? Like, what do you feel like when you're doing hard
I
exercises?
feel like it's pretty, I don't know, subconscious, unconscious, like, especially when I'm lifting now, like when I'm lifting pretty heavy weights, which I'm being challenged in the gym. I'm not really thinking of my pelvic floor because I feel like I've already put in all the work. So I'm not thinking of like drawing in when I'm like going down on a squat. Every once in a while, if I'm feeling like my pelvic floor is heavy, which I can still get that. But again, I think that's because I'm running a lot. And so it's like I'm pounding 100 to 105 miles a week. Sometimes it just feels very heavy. I'll kind of have to check in and say, hey, have I been lazy with my breathing, or am I not like engaging my core, and am I just going through the motions? So I will have a check-in with myself every couple of weeks.
And I tell women that's the ultimate goal, is to train the muscles all the way, get the strength and control so that the brain can take what it needs when. So you don't have to be thinking about it as much. It does become kind of second nature again. You didn't think about it prenatally, like before kids, you didn't think about it too much because the muscles kind of responded appropriately. And it really only takes several weeks before your brain kind of starts responding appropriately. So you don't have to think about it all the time, hopefully. Okay, so Steph, how about you do the sitting lean? Why don't you do it both ways where, you know, kind of purposely don't engage your core, and maybe you kind of have to think about this. We'll have to see.
How far?
If you can maybe turn just a little bit so we can see, like, yeah, there we go. Just kind of see how your core responds as you lean back.
How far should I go back?
As far as you feel comfortable.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to shift.
And then you can go back up.
Okay.
Maybe just do that one more time. So you probably have to think about it a little bit, right? To not engage the core, like just let it hang a little bit. Okay, and so you can see a little bit of bulging with the abdomen. So now do that with engaging your core, which is probably, we don't have to engage all the way. We're just getting the brain to activate those muscles and control pressure. Good. Just do it one more time and just do a breathe out and come back. So how does it feel, the first version where you purposely let your core go, and the second one where you just activate it a little bit?
Yeah, I feel like I still got to a similar point where I was having the shakes, but it was just like as soon as my brain said, okay, engage my core, it was like it didn't have to work as hard. It's just new, essentially.
And which one do you feel better doing?
The second one with my core.
Yeah. Getting those muscles involved, so they're helping with the exercise somewhat.
Yep.
And it does make the muscles fatigue faster if you're cueing them. Not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so I don't know, I keep interjecting a little bit. Do you have any questions right now, Aubrey, for Steph?
So do we want to move into the questions that people have been asking?
Yeah, we can go ahead and tackle some of those.
Okay. Okay, so someone, let's see, and either of you two can answer this one. So someone, let's see, they said, thanks for sharing your experiences. I'm 14 months postpartum in my second pregnancy, and I have an umbilical hernia. So until I know how large it is, I'm not running in order to not make it worse, but I miss doing cardio. Can I run while waiting to see a specialist?
So I would say if you're not having pain with the running, you can definitely run with a hernia. It really depends on your pain level. Running is not necessarily going to make a hernia worse. You don't have that pressure pushing out like you would if you did a really heavy lift. And you can even learn how to strengthen your core with a hernia, get as far as you can without pain. This is what you would want to do before surgery anyways. And a lot of doctors will look at hernias and maybe decide you don't need surgery because you can do a lot of things without pain. So it really depends on pain level and a doctor's recommendation. But if you can start strengthening that core and do what you can without pain, you can start core exercises, you can start running for sure.
I'm pretty sure I have one. I've never, like, if you could, sometimes you can almost see, like, when I get close
Yeah,
up.
a little bit of a bulge up there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have one, and I'm not saying do what I do, but I have been running a lot for the last couple of years. And like Celeste said, pain is your guide, and not Googling things online and just seeing like what doesn't seem right. But yeah, like if you're not having pain or anything setting you back, you can definitely train your core. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from DR. For a lot of women, it will never, like, I might never come all the way back together and all this, but I'm so functionable and out of pain. I would never get surgery or do anything personally because it will always look that way. But when it's functioning at a really great level, that's as good as that you can ask for, I think.
Yeah. And I always tell people, any client I work with, you find their threshold and you progress them from there. And so that applies to postpartum. It applies to everyone. You find their threshold, what the pelvic floor is capable, what the core is capable of, what you can do, and slowly progress from there. And running is fine if you have DR too. Like, it's not high pressure stress. It's a little harder on the pelvic floor, but you can, depending on your symptoms, and if you're working with a pelvic PT, they may want you to back off a little bit depending on your level of symptoms or problems. A lot of times you can continue to run and work on the strength and the coordination. It may be a little more slower response, but it just depends on the level of symptoms and the pelvic PT or who you're working with, what they recommend. But Steph continued to run and work on strengthening her core, strengthening her pelvic floor, and still stressing that pelvic floor with a lot of impact. And a lot of people maybe don't realize, like, running fast takes a lot more strength and coordination in that core and pelvic floor. And so it does take a lot of time sometimes, if you have a lot of symptoms, to slowly get used to the impact of sprinting and going faster. Aubrey, you have any other questions you want to throw at her? I do want at some point, we'll maybe have Steph demonstrate a couple hard exercises, and then, but yeah, we'll see what kind of questions you have.
Yeah, well, maybe this might be a good time to do that last demonstration. There's a few questions we can ask just to finish it off, but we can do that first.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. I saw a comment. Okay, I'm trying not to read the comments. So right now I'm trying to let Aubrey do that.
There's two questions kind of in the private. Do you see that, Jessica and Amy?
It might be.
It
might be personal to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So I could say, I'll just read them real quick. 3.5 weeks. Do you have general recommendations for progression and return to running? When and how do you build back mileage and then speed? Walk, jog first? ? Which I think that's a good question. It kind of relates to the other question we had there about, like, what's the timeline? It's always hard for us to give you like an exact timeline, right? Because everyone's delivery is different. Everyone's, return to walk running, but I'll give you a general guideline of kind of what I did. Essentially, I waited 6 to 7 weeks postpartum. For me, it was making sure I stopped bleeding, and then that there wasn't a lot of what I talked about, like prolapse. So feeling like that heaviness down in your pelvic floor. Once I felt like that was at bay. For me, that was around 7 to 8 weeks. I just started with walking, and I would just push the baby in the stroller. And I would start with like 15 minutes walking. And then once I felt like I was up to like an hour of, I would call it aggressive walking, like, don't talk to me, I'm going to walk with my baby. That made me feel like I could go for a short run. And I was really gradual. Around 8 or 9 weeks is, like I said, when I did my first run, I did 3 minutes in my first run. Because I also looked at, not only was I 8 weeks postpartum, but I hadn't run the last 10 weeks of my pregnancy. So when I looked at, if you came back from an injury, you wouldn't just all of a sudden jump into a big run. So I went 3 minutes, and then the next couple of days I brought it up to about 10 or 12 minutes. And I just kind of went off that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So if I felt okay the next day, I would do a little bit more, like adding a few more minutes. If I felt like something was in pain, or maybe like I started bleeding again, or something just felt off, I would either take the day off or run a little less. And I think you kind of just make those incremental increases each week. And then, yeah, you also have to look at life stress. Are you working? Do you have other kids? You know, what are the things that might be taking away from your recovery? And just give yourself a little grace and try to get yourself, you know, out of pain, doing some good breathing, core exercises. And then I think once you do that, after a few months, kind of green light, if everything's going well, to build up at the level that you were at, you know, pre-postpartum.
There is another question. So someone's asking about maybe what more like advanced core exercises they could do. They say they've already been to a pelvic floor PT. They've been doing some exercises, and they want to still be making some type of progress.
Yeah, it kind of depends on where they left off. I usually go through an assessment with them and test them on some exercises, what's hard for them, what's not, and go from there. Maybe Steph could demonstrate a couple of her exercises. You know, it's hard because she doesn't have the equipment. So I may, you know, it's just something as simple as, you know, if I was on the floor here, you know, it's really about challenging the core in all the positions. So anti-rotational exercises, learning to use the rectus abdominis muscle again. So yeah, there are ways you can start doing modified crunches without the high pressure. And so some of those of my favorites are, especially people who have, you know, maybe they're getting over prolapse symptoms, easy ways to just start working those rectus abdominis muscles without as much pressure. So butt lifts, you can do toe touches. That's not as much pressure as if Steph wanted to demonstrate a V sit.
Ooh, okay.
Something she could work on now. This is a very high level, high pressure core exercise that's very difficult, you know, but coming off the floor and going down, that would be something she could do after she's doing the other ones that I'm showing her. And she's, you know, she does medicine ball twists. Why don't you demonstrate the medicine ball twists that you do all the time? You know, some people think you can't do these or you shouldn't do them. But she does that one a lot, holding a weight, rotational exercise. I mean, you just really do need to train the core all the ways. Rotation, anti-rotation, isometric, train the rectus, train the transverse, train the obliques, side planks, you know, front planks, doing all those versions are all really, really important.
I'm getting a good workout here. Thank you. Okay, a couple questions here, but some coming to us. Someone asked, we cannot see anyone, correct? Like no
Right.
one's, okay.
Oh yeah,
Can't
we
see
can
anyone.
see
Not
the
seeing any of you,
participants.
some of us are asking everyone. And then let's see here. Someone asked about heaviness. I think that was important. They basically said that 9 months postpartum, still don't think they've made enough progress. Just finished pelvic floor PT. What more can they do? Because they still have heaviness.
I would ask, what did you leave off doing? Was it just pelvic floor exercises? Did you do some dead bugs? I'd want to advance those dead bugs. I'd want to test your side plank strength, your adductor strength, your glute strength. I'd want to test your rectus strength and see where you're struggling and work on those.
And then if we don't get to some of your questions outside of what Celeste does and all the ReCore, I do have to recommend my friend Sarah Tanza.
Yes.
Some of the questions you're asking in the private chat, like, things about like vaginal dryness or different stuff like that, that is right up Sarah's alley. So Pelvic Potential on Instagram is her. So I would definitely recommend, because she loves talking about vagina.
And I do want to say, I'm going to do a panel discussion with her and Jessica Dorrington in about 3 weeks. So I'll post about that. So that one, we will be taking questions, just answering questions the whole time.
Awesome. That's going to be, ooh, what is a dead bug? LOL. Okay. So dead bug, you can explain it if you want, Celeste. Well, sometimes I can what? You want to explain it while I'm doing
Oh, yeah. Dead bug, depending on how you cue the abdominal muscle, you're going to get a different challenge out of it. But if you cue to activate the core, pull it in a little bit, you're going to challenge that transverse. And you can add a weight in your hands. You can add a medicine ball to your feet, but you're trying to stabilize the core and not let it move while you move the arms or while you move the legs. And so you're challenging that core to stabilize. And there's, I feel like there's like 30 different versions of this exercise, but definitely you can go from easy to really, really hard.
And you look like a bug that died and it's on their back.
Yeah.
Someone asked about planks, and that's funny. I actually don't do a lot of like front planks anymore, but I will say from the beginning, and Celeste, correct me if I'm wrong, I think side planks are one of the safest to do, even at an early postpartum, because it never felt like it put a lot of stress, like right here, but you correct me if I'm wrong. So you can start with a side plank on your knee, which is really gradual. And then when you can progress, you can go all the way up. This always felt like the safest to me, but also really great oblique work. And yeah.
So I think I initially do with transverse exercises, dead bugs, then side planks. I do introduce front planks and push-ups for sure within the first 6 weeks of programming. It's towards the end, once they feel like they have a little more control with their muscles, just because you can do a plank without having a lot of inner core control, but it just makes all the other muscles work really, really hard. And so I just like to give women a little bit of a foundation before, so it feels a little better for them, but it's not the end of the world. As long as you're training those muscles, you're getting stronger. And I don't have a no list at all. It's just about progressing to feel strong and capable of doing the exercise well.
I was going to show something that when I was first doing this, it was my visual that was throwing me off. I thought, because if you can see what my skin does, I have this huge, I thought I was bulging, but really like that's just
it's just the
skin. Exactly. But I think it's important to note like that wasn't a problem, but yeah, it grossed me out at first. I was like, oh, what's going on here? So I think it's good if women could see that instead of just 6-pack abs going on.
Yeah, it's definitely something we talk about a lot, is letting women know there's a lot of things going on with the core. Even women who don't have much ab separation, their muscles have been stretched out and they need strengthening. And if they have ab separation, they can have extra skin, or they can have belly fat that's contributing to the look of the belly. You really can't tell by looking at someone most of the time what kind of separation they have, you don't know what kind of function they have. So it really just needs to be assessed and go from there. I guess we went way over time. So
I was about to say, we probably need to wrap up. Maybe just one last question for you, Steph. So being a mom can make running and racing just a bit more complex or challenging sometimes, but I would love to ask, how do you feel that being a mom and motherhood has like benefited your professional running career, or maybe what do you hope your kids are learning from your dedication and what you've overcome postpartum?
Sure. I mean, I feel like being like a mom makes me a better professional runner, and then being a professional runner makes me be a better mom. It's mainly because I appreciate what I'm doing in the moments I'm doing it. You know, I have a few hours each day where I go to practice and I can just be all into that. And then I know when I come home, like now it's mom time. But same thing, like I appreciate having like that downtime and doing all the activities with my kids, knowing like I get to pursue my dreams for a few hours each day. And that's out on the roads, out on the track, you know, when I'm racing marathons. But I also realize like balance is a myth because it's impossible to be everything all the time, every day. And so I like to say that you have to show up as the best version of yourself that day. So some days I like nail it as a professional athlete. I'm like, oh, I'm getting all my things in. And guess what? I probably ignored my kids a little too much, or I didn't play baseball with them because I was too tired. And then some days I'm like doing so much as a mom or entrepreneur that maybe my running kind of takes a little bit more of a back seat than it should. But I try to realize like it is impossible to do all the things all the time. And once I gave myself that grace, I think it allowed me to like have a better perspective. And you know, most people who'll say like, oh, it's so inspirational what you do. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys forget, like, I get paid to do this. Like, this is a luxury. I get paid to nap. I get paid to like go see Celeste. I get, you know, I have all the help and the resources. And so it's all the other women out there who to me are the warriors trying to balance having kids, having jobs, trying to get back to exercises. And so that's kind of always been my inspiration, trying to share, trying to bring you guys information, bring you the right people, which is Celeste. Yeah, so that's kind of, I would say, what I think being both professional athlete and mom does. And then as far as what I hope my boys learn, I mean, I hope they just see that I am not giving up on my dreams. My dream was to be a mom, but my dream is to also, you know, pursue to see how good I can be in running, and also to leave more of a legacy on the sport than when I got here. And I think also change things in women's running, women's health, things that I think could use improvement. My hope is that I'm using my voice and my resources to, make women not just say, okay, this is it for me, but make them always strive for more and realize they can get the most out of themselves, you know, if they have the right tools and the right access.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about your journey, and we're super excited for your marathon coming up. So make sure you are following Steph on Instagram. Your handle is
Steph Rothstein.
Steph Rothstein, and you'll be running New York City Marathon in about 5 weeks or something like that, right? 5 weeks. And thank you so much. We're going to have another series next week with another runner and some more topics coming up too. So thank you so much, Steph.
Thank you. And Celeste and Aubrey, thanks for putting this on. You are making a huge difference for women, and can't wait for our big 500 women conference one day for postpartum.
Yes, we'll do that. And the last thing I just want to throw in there, if you're struggling and you're feeling like you are not progressing, please, you know, if you don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to me. I know lots of pelvic PTs if you're having a lot of pelvic symptoms. If you're done with pelvic PT and you're ready to progress even more, reach out to me. But we will progress you and get you back doing what you want to be doing. Don't let diastasis stop you. Don't let prolapse stop you. Just learn how to reduce those symptoms, navigate them, and build your strength and move on. So, all right. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys later. The recording will be sent to everyone who's registered. So you'll get that recording tomorrow. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Still recording. I wasn't sure if I'm
You're
staying.
still there. So thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Okay. Bye.